Professor of Political Science at Cypress College in LA. Now, this is an issue, isn't it? It's a real new world problem, Professor.
It is global, Tim. It's not just the United States. As you know, many of these companies are affected by it all over the world, and they affect other countries' economies. That's why President Biden's going to be talking to Chancellor Merkel about coordinating the efforts against these Russia-based private hackers. These are not the Russian government necessarily. It's actually private hackers, but they're doing it from Russian territory, and the Russian government should take action along with other governments of the world. If it means taking actual cyber action against the ransomware perpetrators, it needs to be done, but mainly there has to be a response, and it needs to be serious from all different countries that are involved. That's what I would suggest.
Oh, absolutely. Needs to be clamped down, and clamped down hard. Now, Afghanistan, a couple of decades on, it doesn't seem to be any better place, to be honest, after all the involvement with the US, us, everybody.
It's a big tragedy, but it's something that would have been expected because there's been no other country that could be in Afghanistan and be able to rule that country or even support a puppet government. The Soviet Union tried it. The British tried it before them. They were driven out. The Soviets were driven out. The US now has to leave. And the thing is, the Afghan government had 20 years to get it together and to fight corruption within its own midst, which could have actually helped them build a really positive infrastructure, build a positive society that would have been based on democracy and democratic values. And the U.S. should have been more involved with that in terms of economic aid and seeing that that was done, that corruption had to be fought. Right now, 20 years is way too much already. And President Biden, as he pointed out, every year is an extra year that's not needed and more people die. And this has to be done and taken care of with the Afghan people themselves. And I think the U.S. should be available to support economically from the outside, but not have troops there fighting. And I don't think that's a very good thing. I think Biden's probably making the right decision. At least most Americans feel that. The majority do support this particular action of Biden's.
Well, Australia's biggest city, Sydney, is in the middle of a lockdown, but our vaccination rate has finally started to kick. We had 1 million done in the last week, and we're hopefully catching ground. But the US, the vaccination program has been superb. And I was reading a Yale essay the other day that said that 279 million plus deaths were avoided because of the vaccination and 1.1 million hospitalisations. Obviously, there are cases at the moment, but most of those are with people that are not vaccinated.
Absolutely correct. And congratulations on Australia finally taking off with the vaccination rate and getting much better there. But we were way ahead of you guys to begin with, because the thing is, so many people who died, I think about 99.5% of the COVID deaths recently have been those who are unvaccinated. That's a number that should wake everyone up, that it's absolutely important to get these vaccines into people's arms. Only 48%, 49% of the American population is fully vaccinated. So we have a ways to go as well. As you know, herd immunity is not achieved until we reach at least minimum 70% vaccination rate, fully vaccinated, up to 85%, and that has to be moved forward. We've got a problem here. 49% of Republicans refuse to be vaccinated. 95% of Democrats actually are vaccinated or will be getting vaccinated. There's a partisan divide, unfortunately, and it should not be a partisan issue. This is an issue of health, and President Biden has to push it that way and see that it's done, because if we don't get the vaccinations in the United States and throughout the world, we're going to have these variants rise all over the place and come back to bite us and to haunt us here and all over the world, including Australia. So it has to be a global effort, and just has to start right here in the United States, which we have control over, actually.
Now, Donald Trump, we've seen him pipe up. We've been listening to the music again, a couple of rallies. He's taking on the social media giants.
Yes, he is. He's actually taking on a lawsuit against Twitter and Facebook, and I think Google as well, for YouTube, because he feels they would actually have kind of de facto censorship of him by pushing him off their platforms. But the fact is, the First Amendment, which gives the freedom of speech and freedom of press rights to people in America, refer to the government's suppression of private viewpoints. The government cannot suppress private viewpoints. And in this case, it's not the government suppressing it, it's Facebook and Twitter and Google that is suppressing his point of view. And they're using the reason that is that he put out misinformation, dangerous information, actually incited the violence on January 6th, for example, and lots more disinformation subsequently, and that's why they had to push him off the platform. So he's got a lawsuit. I don't think he's going to win it, but something has to be done to where these tech giants can self-censor So can censor those people that they think are really dangerous, but they have to be able to do it themselves, not have the government tell them to do it or have Trump tell them to do it. This is a very difficult conundrum to deal with this particular situation. Now, one more thing is the tech giants are very large, and there's Democrats and others looking toward regulating them or breaking them up to some extent or limiting their power to be like monopolies. That also has to be taken into consideration.
But for those anti-Trump people, and there's many of them, not only in the US but right around the world, they applauded social media for taking those his personal accounts down because they believed that he was just propagating lies.
Yes, and I must commend him for that because he was propagating lies and dangerous lies that was stimulating instability, not to mention violence, which, by the way, is against the Constitution, to incite violations against the law and the legal-based institutions on the Constitution. And so he was doing that, and so we have to applaud them for taking him down at this point. One more thing I must mention, that Trump is not only tied up with this problem, but his own Trump organization was actually indicted by the state level New York State district attorney in Manhattan, and that's something he's going to have to pay attention to that, his organization. He has to go and defend them and work on getting lawyers for that. So he should really focus more on that than anything else, because otherwise he could end up in a real big problem. Just
finally, Professor, is it a very, very different place, the United States? We've just had July 4, one of the big markers in your country. Is it a very, very different place in early July 2021 to what it was in 2020?
Definitely. There were far more people vaccinated. I mean, for example, at this time a year later, we have 49% vaccinated, like I told you, fully, and even more, close to 60% or more that are either partly or fully vaccinated. That's allowed people to be more freer in their activity, but to be still careful, wear masks when you need to. And the CDC has loosened up the guidelines, but they cannot open up too fast or become too loose too soon, because this Delta variant, Tim, is extremely dangerous. It's just spreading like wildfire here. In fact, if you look at the numbers, it's now 52% of the infectious rate. That's the Delta variant alone is taking over 52% of the new infections. And that's a real problem. We have to smash that virus by using masks, social distancing, and getting the vaccinations in as fast as possible.
Everyone needs to get the vaccine as soon as they possibly can. There's just absolutely no question of that. Thank you so much, Professor. Always love our weekend chats.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tim. Take care.